Do you want to get really crack the drums, but you don't have a lot of time? I mean, maybe you just had a school break and you're getting used to having no time in your schedule again, and you still want to improve at drums at the same rate you have been. Well, this is the perfect place for you, and I can also relate to that. As of right now, I have maybe an hour or two a day to practice drums, as opposed to, 8 hours a day in the summertime or during school breaks. Kinda sucks, but what are you gonna do about it? The only thing you can do is make your practice as efficient as possible, and that's exactly what I've done. With 10 minutes a day, to be honest, you're never gonna get nearly as good as you possibly can, but I'm gonna break down how you can split up your time to practice in the most efficient manner you can to get the most out of the time you do have. Step one is, of course, the warm-up, and this is really hard to do in a minute, which is all I'm allotting for this, so I'm gonna try and find the exercise for your hand speed that is the most efficient in terms of warming you up. In order to do this, we're gonna be hitting the practice pad in some form for the entirety of your minute. We're gonna cycle through 5 different rudiments here. Those are going to be single stroke rolls, double stroke rolls, paradiddles, paradiddle-diddles, and 6-stroke rolls. Set your metronome to a tempo you're able to play for 1 minute straight without any breaks, but not necessarily at a tempo that you're comfortable with. You want this to be at a level where you're decently fatigued and struggling to keep up with the tempo by the time you're done. If you're not sure what this tempo is, you're gonna have to dedicate some time outside of your practice session to figuring out what that is. And make sure you test this only when you're not warmed up, because that's kind of the whole point. To give you some benchmarks, I would say it looks something like this. For beginners, it'd be 16th notes at 100 beats per minute, and then 16th note triplets for the paradiddle, diddles, and 6-stroke rolls. Intermediate's 160 BPM, and advanced 175 beats per minute. The way this one is gonna work is we're gonna do 4 bars of each rudiment and cycle through every single rudiment until the timer ends. Step 2, this is going to change from day to day, but for the next 8 minutes, we're going to work diligently at whatever skill we're trying to improve on that given day. The way you identify what skill you're going to work on is to find a weak point in your drumming and then put it down in your calendar that you're going to dedicate a day to that. Say, for example, you don't know a lot of beats or your fills are getting repetitive, you could dedicate a day to just learning 4 or 5 new beats and cementing them into your memory. If you only have 10 minutes, I would say practice the same skill for 3 to 4 days at a time before you move on to something new, because this will allow you to recall previous things you worked on and cement them into your memory. And if you do decide to change up what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, dedicate at least 1 minute to just recalling what you did the day before. It's kind of been proven that the best way to memorize something is to recall it just before you're about to forget it. And for example, if you're learning a new beat and you're about to forget it, but you come back the next day, 24 hours later, and you recall it just before it might slip out of your memory, then the next day you're gonna memorize it even better. In summary, 10 minutes a day isn't a lot of practice time, but by practicing for 3 to 4 days at a time, consistency really is your biggest contributor here, and that's gonna be how you kind of improve at each area. Step 3, now that you figured out what you're gonna do with your practice session, what do you actually have to do to improve? Just to clarify, your practice sessions should never sound good, because if you sound good, it means you're not learning anything. I'm gonna give you a couple of concrete examples here that you can build off of in more niche areas of drumming. So if your goal is to expand your vocabulary in terms of the beats you know, find a song you really like or an Instagram video you find interesting and spend your time for the entire 8 minutes dissecting and learning whatever drum beat you hear. This is going to improve your active listening, and it's just going to get you better at the skill of learning songs. If you're really struggling with something, you can find the sheet music for it and use that as an aid. For example, if I'm learning a Sleep Token song, I'm just at the level where I can't hear that and then immediately figure it out. It's just such a benefit to get sheet music to learn that kind of thing. If your goal is to get faster, find a beat you already know, combined with a fill you already know, and just find a tempo where you're just about uncomfortable with it and keep pushing it up and up, making sure that you get every single level perfect. So say you can play a beat at 175 beats per minute, play it at 175 beats per minute for 8 bars. If you do that comfortably, or if you're just able to do it at all, push it up 1 or 2 beats per minute and keep going until you can't play it anymore. Pushing your limit like this over time is exactly how you speed up. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to beats, it also applies to rudiments on the practice pad. This concept of slowly improving your speed can be applied to, like I said, any area of drumming: kick drum speed, practice pad, beats, fills. The last example I'll give you is to try and learn a new song. Now, you're not going to learn a new song in 8 minutes in a day. Any song of decent complexity is going to take you probably a month or 2 to learn with only 10 minutes a day, but it's still very valuable to increase your knowledge of different songs. So I think it's a perfectly valid use of your time to just dedicate each day to learning a new part of a song. Now, step 4, the last step of our 10-minute practice session, is going to be dedicated towards planning what to do with tomorrow's session. A lot of time can be wasted by not having a strict plan on what you're going to do. So even if you dedicate the last minute to just figuring out what you want to do with tomorrow's session, say you noticed a weak point in today's session, you were practicing a beat and you noticed your kick drum was off, you were a little weak, you were a little late on the kick. just dedicate tomorrow towards increasing your kick drum speed, for example. And one last side note I want to add is I want to challenge the notion that you only have a certain amount of time every day to practice, right? We like to think that you need to actually be behind the kit for it to be considered practicing. But the beauty of drumming, as opposed to any other instrument, is that we can kind of practice anywhere, right? Even if you don't have a practice pad or sticks. If you were to total the amount of time I spend tapping out kick drum patterns like throughout the day, it would probably be like 5 or 6 hours. Just because if I'm ever in school, if I'm ever working in between sets at the gym, I'll tap out the kick drum pattern to whatever song I'm playing. Or I'll take whatever song I'm playing and try to play 16th notes over it, either with my heels or my shin muscles. So you can kind of practice in a way, you can practice double bass anywhere you are just by like playing rudiments with your feet or trying to just push past your limits in terms of how fast you can play 16th notes. Same can go with your hands, just not as much. You know, you can still practice rudiments with your hands on your lap or on a desk or whatever, provided you're not annoying other people. And then yeah, like also a practice pad and sticks can be taken anywhere. Even if you're a really busy person, I think everyone has at least maybe an hour a day to practice, as long as they are diligent with their time and work hard to figure out times during the day when they can practice, even if they aren't behind a kit.